Akira Explained Easy. And why the anime is a critique of authoritarianism. In today's video, let's talk about one of the greatest classics of animations and anime of all times. Akira. The video will be divided into two parts. First, I will explain the story from beginning to end. Because although the story is very good, it is quite complex. Then I will show why Akira is one of the best critiques of authoritarianism in contemporary cinema. Give your like, subscribe, and activate the bell. Part 1. Explaining the story of Akira. After a devastating explosion in Tokyo, the world enters a new era. Fear and poverty take over the city. The government passed strict laws, curfew, repression of protests, and an increasingly militarized police. All in the name of order. But behind all of that they hide a dark secret. Decades before the government invested in research on abilities for psychic weapons. For children were used as guinea pigs. They were turned into living weapons. One of them, Akira, became so powerful that he was the one who caused the original explosion. The government, even after dissecting Akira, did not discover how his power worked. To hide its responsibility for the original explosion, the government locked Akira's dissected remains in an underground chamber beneath the Olympic Stadium, built to lure the population into entertainment. The people never knew the truth. They only knew the official version about the bomb for the war. From the beginning, the anime shows signs of the brutality of Akira's dystopian world. In an opening scene, the TV shows a commercial with happy dogs eating dog food, while in the foreground police dogs are shot dead during a chase. A cruel metaphor for how the state uses and discards living beings without remorse. Amidst the chaos, rebel groups try to resist. Some are real revolutionaries, others are manipulated by corrupt politicians who plan coups d'état. There are also religious sects who worship Akira as a savior waiting for his return. Meanwhile, youth find their own ways to express their individuality. Kaneda, a young and dominant leader, and Tetsuo, the young boy who tries to find his place in the world but who is always ridiculed, are part of a motorcycle gang that runs through the streets of Neo-Tokyo seeking adrenaline and violent fights. In one of these disputes, Tetsuo is involved in an accident when colliding with one of the runaway Weapon Kid. The Weapon Kid had been kidnapped by the rebel group to be used in a coup d'état, but the rebel was intercepted and the Weapon Kid fled alone. The clash between Tetsuo and the Weapon Kid awakens latent abilities in Tetsuo. The army arrives quickly to get the Weapon Kid, captures Tetsuo, and takes Kaneda and his friends to jail, suspecting their involvement with rebels. The bikers are released. In police corridors, Kaneda meets Kei. She is a young rebel involved in the kidnapping of the Weapon Kid. Kaneda falls in love with her, even though she doesn't want anything to do with him. Meanwhile, Tetsuo was taken for experiments. In the lab, they discover that his powers are similar to Akira's. Scientists are excited about this discovery because even though they had dissected Akira in the past, they had never come to a conclusion about how the child's power worked. Scientists believe that Tetsuo is a new chance to master this enormous power. They decide to stimulate it even knowing the risk of a new catastrophe. Tetsuo flees. He meets his girlfriend and steals Kaneda's motorcycle to escape the city. Trying to escape, Tetsuo is attacked by a rival gang. Kaneda arrives in time to save his friend, but once again the army appears to take Tetsuo away. This time, Tetsuo is no longer a simple prisoner. He is a growing threat. When the rebels discover that a new human weapon was created, they decide to kidnap him. Kaneda had bumped into the rebel group following Kei. He convinces the rebels to take him on the kidnapping operation because he is determined to help Tetsuo. But Tetsuo is no longer the same. In his search for answers in a destructive battle in the laboratory, he discovers from one of the weapon children that Akira is stored in the Olympic Stadium and sets out to find him. The city collapses. Rebels, military and religious fanatics follow the journey of Tetsuo, who, increasingly powerful, begins to lose his humanity. In the Battle of the Bridge, he massacres not only soldiers, but also civilians who idolized him by confusing him with the myth of Akira. At the stadium, Tetsuo finally finds Akira, but discovers that he is not a child, but merely desiccated remains. Frustrated and maddened, he completely loses control. The government, now with no other option, activates the space weapon SOL to destroy him. An energy beam descends from the sky and tears off his arm, but does not kill him. Tetsuo replaces his missing limb with a grotesque mass of wires and metal, becoming something beyond human. Kaneda arrives to pick up Kei, who was there being manipulated by one of the weapon children, and also Tetsuo himself. They fight, but Tetsuo is already beyond any limit. His body deforms. It grows uncontrollably and takes the form of a gigantic fetus. It begins to absorb everything around it. Quando Akira desperta. Even reduced to fragments, he is still alive. Together with the weapon children, a new explosion starts, similar to the one that destroyed the city in the past. But this time, there is a purpose. The children enter the sphere of light created by the explosion and manage to save Kaneda and part of the city. In the end, a small floating sphere falls into Kaneda's hands. That's all that's left of Tetsuo. Some interpretations suggest that at the moment of the explosion, Tetsuo created a universe of his own and became part of it. And so ends Akira's story, leaving behind a trail of destruction, but also a glimpse of something new and unknown. Part 2. Criticism of authoritarianism in Akira. There is a lot of symbolism in Akira's story, especially related to the social trauma of the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki against its people during the Second World War, which, in addition to being a genocide, left traces among the survivors, with deformities and illnesses. But beyond that, the story is a landmark as a dystopia against oppression. I will show 10 points of how Akira is a portrait of an authoritarian state. 1. A constant scenario of external war to justify the authoritarian state. 2. The narrative of internal enemies, such as social or religious groups, also to justify the authoritarian state. 3. The use of increasingly destructive war technologies, including those with the potential for their own annihilation. 4. Militarization of civil institutions, such as the police, for greater social control. 5. Atomization of society, with the maintenance of great social inequality, without a solid social body, to keep the rich and the poor apart and to govern with the support of oligarchies and the rich. 6. The use of human beings as disposable strategic resources. Civilians and soldiers ready to be discarded without remorse. 7. Destruction of factual truth, with control of information and historical narrative, erasing real facts and replacing them with convenient versions. 8. Use of entertainment as a way to deceive the population and keep them away from relevant social issues. 9. A government of dehumanized bureaucrats, with politicians who govern from strongholds far from the violence they generate, through rules that subordinates simply obey, but no one feels responsible for. And so, violence perpetuates itself without a guilty conscience. 10. the destruction of individuality. Tetsuo symbolizes this perfectly. Always treated as inferior, he only gains power when he becomes a threat. But instead of freeing himself, he repeats the cycle of oppression, becoming a new tyrant. Authoritarianism does not allow for autonomy. Only submission or domination. You are either the oppressed or the oppressor. Defending freedom is not just a nice speech, it is a necessity to prevent dystopian futures, like Akira's, from ceasing to be fiction. Now tell me in the comments, what do you think of this criticism of authoritarianism? Can you see parallels with the real world? Here on the channel, we talk about books, films, and animations that bring important social reflections, always thinking about how we can build a freer society. If you liked it, subscribe for more content like this.